guys, Julie here with Danny's Dream Acres. So we are down at the barn and we wanted to go over our solar that we are using to power the barn. So right behind me here is the solar panels that Mike has put up, and he's buried the lines underneath to run into the barn, and that is going to supply the lights and anything else that we're going to need with the goats while we're using the barn. So I'm gonna head on in and he is going to go over all of the solar information.
All right, guys, really appreciate you joining us here on Danny's Dream Acres. I'm Mike. You can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, and obviously please subscribe to that button down there in the far right corner, and like this video as well as subscribe. It helps us out, so appreciate that. So as part of our barn build for the goats, we needed to have power. I kind of went overboard just because I never knew what I was going to do as far as moving forward, but out the window there, and I'll have a separate piece where I'll explain more about the solar panels themselves. But essentially that's 8 100-watt Renogy solar panels, and they're running down and they go underground into the barn. You can see here where they come up through the ground and up through the top, and I ran them down through across the top here where my finger is, so they'd be out of the way and you know, less damage would happen to them. But out here, as far as the solar array goes, and I'll cover this in detail in a later video, but the solar panel is wired in series and parallel. So I have 4 panels running in series, and then I have the other 4 panels running in series, and then I ran those 2 series in parallel. So that kept my voltage high and my amperage a little bit lower. So I wasn't too worried about having to run large cable because I wasn't too worried about the voltage drop. And then again, I ran it underground, and it comes up in through here. Now, as we move down through here, let me just jump over here and show you guys that. So bear with me here. I got the goats in here, and I don't want them to escape. So anyway, so we can see here we have the power running down through. That's the red and black cable there. That's the PV cable coming from the solar panels, and they run down into my battery box. Now I made this battery box to be fully enclosed for the winter time because I chose, when we started building this system, to use lithium-ion batteries. Now, one of the great things about lithium-ion batteries is they charge very quickly, so you can throw a lot at them and they'll charge fast. The other thing is they'll discharge very quickly, so that's good. But they also they're very, very efficient. So what I mean is, you can safely take these Renogy batteries, the manufacturer says, down to 20% left. So you can use 80% of the batteries. Now, I have these batteries run in parallel. So that's basically across the bottoms are all the negatives run together, and across the top, all the positives run together. And that gives me, that still gives me a 12-volt system, but the amperage is additive. Everything in here is made by Renogy. We chose to use Renogy, including the solar panels, just because we thought it would be easier to have one manufacturer for all the pieces, and it seemed to be well integrated. Now, I put everything in a self-contained box because of one simple reason. Down here in the barn, it gets very cold, especially in winter. So I made it so that the batteries would be across the top, and then the charge controller and the inverter, the heat from those would actually go up into the top of the battery box and keep the batteries warm. One of the drawbacks to lithium batteries, probably the only, well, there's 2. One is expense. The second is, you know, these lithium-ion batteries, they won't take a charge below 32 degrees. They'll damage themselves. So the BMS, or the battery management system in these batteries, will stop them from taking a charge when it's below 32 degrees. So in order for me to offset that, again, I built this box, and that power, when it's running off the inverter and the charge controller, these things put off a little heat. So when I've got this door shut, that heat kind of filters up towards the top and keeps these batteries warm. So you can see right up here, I put in a kind of an old school thermometer, and where you see the indoor, that's actually outside. So I flip-flopped them. So the indoor one is for the temperature here in the barn, and the one that says outdoor has a little cable that runs inside the battery box, and then I've got it just kind of sitting, the sensor sitting right here, just sitting right in the open, and that tells me what the temperature is inside the box. Now, I chose not to go with one of those remote ones because I found through history and through practice, they don't work so well. And this just seemed to be much more accurate when I tested it in the house. So this is what we went with, and it was cheap, and I don't have to worry about batteries or losing signal or failing or what have you. So anyway, that's what I did there. So that's how I keep the batteries warm. Now, the way I wired these was that the advice given to me by Renogy was the negative over here, the negative coming in from the charge controller, and then the positive coming in from the charge controllers up here. And basically what that does is they told me to wire it this way instead of having like the positive and the negative. They wanted it to flow across all 4 batteries that were in parallel, so I did that. Also, what I did here is I wired these together. These batteries can be connected together through with Ethernet cables or patch cords, RJ45 cables. Each battery has an uplink and a connection port, and basically you wire them all together. Each battery goes to the uplink of the next battery, and then on the outside of the unit is a battery management little display. So as you can see here, I've got basically 400 amp hours of battery. Now that's not completely true, and I'll explain that in a minute, but I can look at this and I can see up here in the top right that I've got basically 126 hours of power running at the current draw. So I can use this, I can go down, I've got 88.2% battery left. I can see I've got 13.2 volts. And right now, because it's a negative sign there, I'm drawing out of these batteries roughly 2.8 amps. So, so because it's a cloudy day and the panels aren't necessarily providing the power, so it's doing a little bit of a draw on it, but I'm not worried because I can see I still have 126 hours at the current draw. Not a problem for me. So anyway, let's move back over here. As we can see, again, these batteries are lined up at the top, wired in parallel. Now let's talk a little bit about safety and how we wired inside here. Over here, I've got a 100 amp fuse and another 100 amp fuse. This is the fuse back here that goes from the charge controller to the batteries. So I'm protecting the circuitry here between the charge controller and the batteries. And then this one is actually the fuse between the inverter and the batteries. So I want to protect both sides. And then what you can't see because it's out at the solar panels is the solar panels are actually fused as well. So out at the solar panel, there's an inline fuse in that PV cable out there. I believe it's a 50 amp fuse. That's what I chose because I'm really running at about 25 amps into the charge controller here. But because of the way I wired it, I have high voltage instead, so I'm not worried about a drop because I'm not pushing a lot of amperage across that wire. Anyway, this just fell down. So let me put this back up in here. Oh, sorry for the screen wobble. Anyway, so that's how I can monitor what's going on with the system. Also, this charge controller, if I light it up, you can see what it's doing. The panels are only putting in 2 watts right now, just because there's no sun and it's almost time for the evening. The 2000 watt pure sine wave inverter down there, this runs our barn fantastic. I used a miter saw connected to this. I used an air compressor to run my my nail gun. I've run all kinds of things off this. It's 2,000 watts continuous, and it will boost or go up to 4,000 watts temporarily just for startup power. It has 3 AC plugs on the back. This one is running to the lights, and this one is this one over here, which you can't really see it, but this one's running to a power plug that I have in the back of the barn, an AC plug that I put back there for Julie and myself, of course, to plug things in. But essentially what I've got here is all the recommended cables. Now you'll see I don't use red cables all over. You know, that was just me because I ran out of it. So I was using what I had. So you'll see negative down here, or black, which is typically for negative, but that's basically the positive side. Again, at the advice of what Renogy had asked me to do. So this is the battery box. Now in the summer, the beauty of this is that the top actually comes off. So I can, in the summertime, the heat will actually flow out of it. I ran this system all summer up in my outdoor garage, and it was perfectly fine. There was no issues with heat, and that's where I tested it. But now that it's actually in service in the barn, it's doing a fantastic job. The other thing that I did is, guys, let me just move over here. Now you get to see my face. Is down here I've got this little, they call this thing the tailgater. You can see that. It's a little generator. It's a 2-stroke generator, and it'll run up to 800, 900 watts. Now the reason I bought this is for one simple reason. If by chance my batteries run out of power and I need to get those batteries charged back up, I have a charger back here. Let me show you this. This is a 20 amp lithium iron phosphate battery charger from Renogy. And what I do is I simply plug this in. You can see here, it just basically plugs in, and I plug that into the generator with just the plug, and then I can connect these charge cables to the batteries, and I can run 5 hours on a full tank of gas, and I can throw 20 amps into those batteries to keep them charged or get them charged back up. I had to do it once, and as a test, I actually did do that because we had 5 days in a row with no sun, and there was a lot of snow. And let me tell you something. In 5 hours, I went from about 45% battery up to 65% battery. That's pretty good considering I was drawing off the batteries as well. It's kind of an emergency situation to keep my batteries going. So that's what I did there. Now for the wiring, you know, I used, you know, I'm not an electrician, but I wired everything together. I've got the light switches here, and you can see the bulbs up the top. I tried to keep those, you know, kind of nice here. And then I ran some power back in the back where I can turn those lights on back in the very back here. And then back there in the back, you see that plug. It's probably hard to see, but it's right there, that little orange thing right there. And that's basically where we can plug AC in and run anything I want. So, guys, that is the quick rundown of the solar. If you have any more questions about something I didn't cover, basically, you know, I've got with 80% draw to a maximum here, I've got about 320 amp hours of power. That's a lot, but it's about as much as I would use for a 12-volt system. If I ever were to upgrade this, which I don't think I'm going to need to, this is almost overkill, but like I said, never know what we're going to be doing in here, and when we add new buildings, we're going to be running from here. I would probably, what I was going to say is I'll probably upgrade to a 24-volt system. That way it halves the amp hours that are drawn from the batteries into the inverter, so you get more runtime, it's more efficient, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments, message us on Facebook or Instagram. Yeah, that's it. So I really appreciate you guys joining in on this one. Thanks. Have a great one.